Station Meridian 9 hummed with the kind of organized chaos that made Cassidy's left eye twitch. Not the bad kind of twitch, mind you, the kind that came from watching 300 shipping containers play musical docking bays while 200 alien species tried to out-bureaucrat each other. She'd been coordinating logistics on this orbital platform for 8 months now. And honestly, the paperwork was somehow worse than when she'd worked retail back on Earth. At least the view was nice. Through the massive observation windows, she could see the purple and gold bands of the gas giant they orbited. And if she squinted, the shimmer of about 1,000 ships waiting for clearance to dock. Somewhere in that mess was her coffee shipment, which was currently 3 cycles late, and if it didn't arrive soon, she was going to commit what the Galactic Coalition would probably classify as a war crime. "Coordinator Cassidy," chirped her comm unit in that annoyingly cheerful AI voice. "Cargo Bay 19 reports a dimensional mismatch in container block Theta. The Rolithian delegation's furniture will not fit through standard doorways." "Of course it won't," Cassidy muttered, pulling up the cargo manifest on her tablet. The Rolithians. Right. The big trade negotiations that had every ambassador on station walking on eggshells for the past 2 weeks. The feline-like species was notoriously proud, formal, and about as flexible as a titanium rod when it came to protocol. Their furniture probably came with a 10-page manual on proper appreciation techniques. She fired off a quick message to engineering, requesting a temporary wall removal, charged to the Rolithian account, naturally, and headed toward the cargo bay to supervise. The corridors were packed with the usual afternoon crowd. A group of methane breathers in their environment suits, a pair of Prilnoth representatives arguing in high-pitched squawks, and what looked like an entire kindergarten class of small, fuzzy creatures being herded by a very tired-looking teacher. Cassidy had learned to navigate station traffic the way Earth drivers navigated rush hour, with aggressive politeness and strategic use of side corridors. She was taking one such shortcut, a maintenance hallway that technically wasn't open to civilian traffic, but nobody enforced that rule, when she nearly tripped over something small and miserable-looking huddled against the wall. "Whoa! Hey!" she said, catching herself on the railing. "You okay there, kiddo?" The something was a Rolithian cub, maybe 8 or 9 in human years, with soft gray and white striped fur and ears that drooped so low they practically touched the floor. The kid, because that's what it was regardless of species, looked absolutely pitiful. Big amber eyes were watery and unfocused. Small nose was running, and the tiny body was curled into a ball of pure misery. "Oh, sweetheart," Cassidy said, her voice automatically dropping into that universal mom tone that transcended species barriers. She crouched down, keeping a respectful distance. "Where's your parent? Are you lost?" The cub made a small, broken sound that might have been an attempt at words, but came out as more of a whimper. One small paw hand reached out slightly, then dropped back down as if even that was too much effort. "Pip!" a sharp voice echoed down the corridor, and Cassidy looked up to see a tall Rolithian female striding toward them with the kind of controlled panic that only a worried parent could manage while trying to maintain dignity. Ambassador Othmara, if Cassidy's mental database was correct. One of the lead negotiators, always impeccably dressed in flowing diplomatic robes, always composed. Right now, though, the ambassador looked like she was barely holding it together. "Ambassador," Cassidy said, standing up but staying near the cub, "I think your little one isn't feeling well." "My deepest apologies, Coordinator," Othmara said, the words crisp but her eyes locked on her child. "Pip was instructed to remain in our quarters. He should not have disturbed you." "He's not disturbing anyone," Cassidy said gently. He's sick. Kids wander when they don't feel good. It's practically a universal constant. Othmara's jaw tightened, a muscle jumping under the fine fur. Our medical officer is currently off station, attending to an emergency on the flagship. He will not return for 3 rotation cycles. The words came out flat, controlled, but Cassidy could hear the frustration underneath. The fear. 3 cycles? That's like, what, 5 days? Cassidy looked down at the miserable cub. Can't another species doctor take a look? Rolithian physiology is complex, and Othmara paused, and for just a moment, the diplomatic mask slipped. The negotiations are at a critical juncture. I cannot show weakness. I cannot leave. And I cannot allow anyone to see that my attention is divided. Oh, that was a whole mess of cultural complications wrapped up in one sick kid and an impossible situation. Cassidy had read the briefings on Rolithian culture. Pride, honor, never show vulnerability, especially not during important political or business dealings. Asking for help was basically admitting defeat, which left one very sick cub and one very scared mom trying to pretend everything was fine. Okay, Cassidy said, making a decision. Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to take Pip back to my quarters, get him comfortable, and see if I can help him feel a little better. You go do your negotiation thing. Nobody needs to know your kid is sick, and you can check on him whenever you have a break. Othmara's eyes widened. You would do this? Why? Because he's a sick kid, and you're stuck in meetings, Cassidy said simply. I'm not a doctor, but I know how to handle a cold or flu or whatever this is. My grandmother raised 5 kids and taught me every home remedy in the book. Plus, my schedule this afternoon is just yelling at cargo. Manifests, and I can do that from anywhere. This is highly irregular. Probably, Cassidy agreed cheerfully. But irregular beats leaving him alone in your quarters, right? The ambassador looked at her child, then at Cassidy, then back at her child. The diplomatic mask cracked a little more. If you would do this, I would be grateful. Great. Come on, buddy, Cassidy said, crouching down again and offering her hand. Let's get you somewhere comfy. Pip looked up at his mother, who gave a small nod. The cub took Cassidy's hand with one small, fuzzy paw, and, wow, okay. That was remarkably similar to holding a human child's hand, just with retractable claws and fur. Universal constants, indeed. I will check on him in 2 hours, Othmara said, the words stiff but sincere. Thank you, Coordinator Cassidy. Just Cassidy is fine, she said, helping Pip to his feet. The kid was wobbly, leaning heavily against her leg. Come on, kiddo. Let's get you sorted out. Her quarters weren't fancy, just standard station housing, a main room that served as living area and kitchenette, a bedroom, a bathroom. But it was clean, comfortable, and most importantly, it had a couch and a kettle. Cassidy got Pip settled on the couch with a blanket, the kid immediately curling into a miserable ball. Right, she said, surveying her patient. Let's see. You've got the sniffles. You're clearly exhausted. You feel warm, but not dangerously so. She gently felt his forehead with the back of her hand. Yep, definitely running a low-grade temperature. This looks like a standard cold or flu. Nothing scary, just miserable. Pip made a small sound that might have been agreement. My grandma used to make me tea when I was sick, Cassidy continued, moving to the kitchenette. It won't cure you, but it'll make you feel better while your body fights off whatever bug you've got. You like sweet things? A tiny nod. Perfect. We're going with the full grandma special. She pulled out her stash of Earth imports, chamomile tea bags, honey, fresh ginger root, and a lemon. The station's hydroponics bay grew some earth plants, and she'd traded a case of Rolithian spice wine, which she'd acquired through perfectly legitimate logistics channels, thank you very much, for a steady supply. While the water heated, she grabbed some crackers from her cabinet and a cool, damp cloth. Pip watched her with those big, watery eyes, occasionally sniffling or coughing weakly. "So here's the deal," Cassidy said, settling back on the couch next to him and gently pressing the cloth to his forehead. "This is going to help with the fever. The tea will help with the throat and the overall ickiness. And these crackers are for when you feel up to eating something. Sound good?" Another tiny nod. "You don't talk much, huh?" "That's okay. My nephew's the same way when he's sick. Just wants to be quiet and have someone nearby." She adjusted the blanket around him. "I'm going to tell you a story while we wait. For the tea. You ever hear about the time humans tried to domesticate caffeine?" Pip's ear twitched slightly, the barest hint of interest. "So, thousands of years ago on Earth," Cassidy began, her voice settling into a gentle storytelling rhythm, "humans discovered these little plants that had beans inside them, and someone, probably someone very tired and very desperate, decided to roast those beans, grind them up, and pour hot water through them. You know what happened? The kettle whistled. She got up, mixed the tea with practiced efficiency, honey and ginger and a squeeze of lemon, and brought it back. Here, careful, it's hot. Little sips. She helped him sit up, holding the mug steady while he took a cautious sip. His nose wrinkled at first, then smoothed out. He took another sip, larger this time. Good? Cassidy asked. A small, barely there purr answered her. Right. So, anyway, she continued, settling back into the couch. Humans got addicted to this coffee stuff. Wars were fought over it. Whole economies built around it. My ancestors were absolutely feral about their morning coffee. Still are, actually. I've got a shipment coming in that's 3 cycles late, and I'm about ready to hijack a cargo ship to get it. Pip took another sip of tea, and was that the tiniest hint of a smile? Hard to tell with the different facial structure, but his ears had perked up slightly. But then, Cassidy said, warming to her theme, humans weren't content with just coffee. Oh no, we found tea, and chocolate, and energy drinks. We basically looked at natural stimulants and said, I can make this stronger, and consume it in unreasonable quantities. My grandmother used to drink tea that could probably strip paint off a shuttle hull. Swore it kept her young. She lived to be 98, so maybe she was onto something. She kept talking, weaving ridiculous stories about Earth and humans and her family, occasionally pausing to help Pip with the tea or adjust his blanket. Slowly, bit by bit, the cub's color improved. The drooping ears lifted slightly. The pained whimpers stopped. He finished the tea, ate 2 crackers, and actually responded to one of her questions with a small, raspy, "Thank you." "You're welcome, buddy," Cassidy said, genuinely touched. "Feeling a little better?" A nod. Then, tentatively, "Story more?" "Oh, you want more stories? I've got 1,000,000 of them. Did I tell you about the time my brother tried to cook Thanksgiving dinner and almost burned down the kitchen?" By the time Othamara arrived exactly 2 hours later, Pip was curled up on the couch, not asleep but peaceful, listening to Cassidy describe the intricacies of Earth holidays with occasional soft purrs. The ambassador stopped in the doorway, staring at her child, and something in her face just softened. "He is better," she said quietly. "Just a cold or flu," Cassidy confirmed, standing up carefully to avoid disturbing Pip. The tea helps with symptoms, and honestly, he just needed some rest and comfort. He should be feeling a lot better by tomorrow. Keep him hydrated, let him sleep, keep him warm. Standard stuff. Human medicine? Othmara asked, looking at the empty mug. Cassidy laughed. It's just tea, Ambassador. Old Earth comfort remedy. Chamomile, honey, ginger, lemon. Nothing fancy. It doesn't cure anything. It just makes you feel less miserable while your immune system does the real work. Just tea, Othmara repeated, but she was looking at Cassidy with an expression that was hard to read. Gratitude, certainly, but something else. Something deeper. You sat with him, told him stories, made him comfortable. Well, yeah, Cassidy said, suddenly feeling awkward. That's what you do for sick kids. In Rolithian culture, Othmara said slowly, caring for another's offspring is a sacred trust. You have honored my family today, Cassidy? Oh, I was happy to help, really. The ambassador stepped forward and placed one paw hand over her heart, bowing slightly. You have my gratitude and my respect. If you ever have need, you need only ask. That seemed like a pretty big deal, culturally speaking, but Cassidy just smiled. Just take care of him, and if he's not better tomorrow, maybe push to get your medical officer back early. I will. Othmara moved to the couch, gently scooping up her child. Pip clung to her, purring louder now, and the ambassador's eyes closed briefly in obvious relief. Thank you, she said again, and then they were gone. Cassidy cleaned up the mug, put away the blanket, and went back to yelling at cargo manifests. Just another day on Station Meridian 9. She had absolutely no idea what she'd just started. 2 days passed without incident. Cassidy wrangled shipping containers, argued with 3 different species about tariff classifications, and finally received her coffee shipment, which improved her mood considerably. She spotted Pip once in the main plaza, bouncing around his mother with the kind of manic energy that only fully recovered children possess, and the cub waved at her with both paws. Othmara nodded respectfully from across the crowd. Mission accomplished, Cassidy thought. One sick kid helped, universe back in balance. Then Commander Nixel showed up at her door. The Rolithian security officer was massive, easily 2 meters tall, with dark charcoal fur marked with silver stripes and a scar across one eye that suggested he'd seen actual combat. He looked like he could bench press a shuttle. He was also currently standing in her doorway, trying to look pathetic. Coordinator Cassidy, he rumbled, his voice like gravel in a cement mixer. I require medical assistance. Cassidy blinked. The medical bay is on level 12. I can give you directions if— No. He coughed, a sound so theatrical it would have gotten him booed off a stage. I have been told you possess healing knowledge. Ancient Earth remedies passed through generations. What? Who told you? That? Sources within the diplomatic corps. Another fake cough. This man was possibly the worst actor Cassidy had ever seen, and she'd sat through her nephew's middle school production of a historical play. My throat is uncomfortable. Cassidy looked at him, really looked at him. He was standing perfectly straight, showed no signs of distress, and kept glancing at her kitchenette like it might contain the secrets of the universe. Your throat is uncomfortable, she repeated slowly. Yes, most uncomfortable. Perhaps. He coughed again, overdoing it so badly he actually had to clear his throat for real afterward. Perhaps the remedy you provided young Pip would ease my suffering. Oh no. Cassidy felt laughter bubbling up in her chest and fought to keep her face neutral. Commander, are you asking me to make you tea? If that is the name of the human medicine, then yes. He tried to look sick, which, on a face designed for intimidation, came across as mild constipation. I am most grievously afflicted. Right, Cassidy said, giving up on keeping a straight face. A grin spread across her features. Come in, you terrible liar. I'll make you some tea. His entire posture changed, tail swishing with what could only be described as excitement. You are most gracious. She made him tea, the same recipe as before, and watched in fascination as this battle-hardened security officer cradled the mug like it was made of precious crystal and took careful, reverent sips. He closed his eyes, purring so loudly it vibrated the air. This is remarkable, he said seriously. I feel restored. Your skills are extraordinary. It's tea, Cassidy said, laughing openly now. Just tea. You weren't even actually sick, were you? Perhaps not gravely, he admitted, not looking remotely ashamed. But the throat discomfort was real. Minor, barely noticeable, almost imperceptible. He took another sip. This is excellent. He finished the entire mug, thanked her with a formal bow that seemed wildly out of proportion to the situation, and left. Cassidy shook her head, amused, and got back to work. The next morning, 3 more Relithians showed up. One claimed his tail felt heavy. Another said she'd sneezed once and was clearly dying. The third just stood there and asked if she was the human with the remedy. Okay, Cassidy said, hands on her hips, looking at the line forming outside her quarters. What is happening? We have heard of your healing abilities, the tail-heavy one said solemnly. I don't have healing abilities. I have a kettle and some tea bags. Tea, the sneezing one said reverently. The ancient human medicine. It's not. You know what? Fine. Everyone inside. But we're doing this efficiently. By midday, she'd served tea to 11 Rolithians, each claiming increasingly absurd ailments. One said his whiskers were asymmetrical, and perhaps the remedy could balance them. Another claimed to have a spiritual malaise that only human medicine could cure. A junior officer just admitted he was curious and wanted to try it. Cassidy set up a proper tea station in her quarters, pulling in extra chairs from storage. She made a rule. If you wanted tea, you had to sit down and actually talk to her for at least 5 minutes. No grabbing and running. Real conversation. Surprisingly, they all agreed. Even more surprisingly, they seemed to enjoy it. These proud warriors, who apparently never showed weakness or took breaks, sat in her tiny quarters and talked about their families, their duties, their home planet. One older officer told her about his daughter, who wanted to be an engineer, but tradition said she should join the military. Another talked about missing the twin moons of their homeworld. You know, Cassidy said to the room at large after the 8th person that afternoon, you guys aren't actually here for the tea, are you? A long pause. Then one of them, a young officer with nervous ears, spoke up. The tea is pleasant, but when do we ever just sit? In our culture, rest is weakness. Stillness is shameful. But if we are receiving human medicine, he trailed off. Then you have an excuse, Cassidy finished, understanding dawning. Oh, you poor workaholics. We prefer dedicated, someone muttered, but there was no heat in it. Right, Cassidy said, pouring another round. Well, I'm officially declaring this a cultural exchange program. You want tea? You tell me a Rolithian story, teach me a phrase in your language, or share something about your home. Deal? The nervous officer perked up. I could teach you proper greeting protocols. Perfect. And you, Cassidy pointed at the whisker balance guy, can tell me about Rolithian cuisine." Word continued to spread. By the end of the third day, Cassidy had served tea to 38 Rolithians, learned 6 phrases in their language, acquired 3 small cultural gifts, and had to request emergency tea supplies from the hydroponics bay. She thought that was as weird as things were going to get. Then station sensors detected 23 Rolithian warships dropping out of light speed in perfect battle formation, and all hell broke loose. The alarm wasn't loud so much as it was persistent, a low wailing that made Cassidy's teeth itch. She was in the middle of explaining the concept of Earth's tea time traditions to a fascinated group of 5 Rolithian officers when every screen in her quarters flashed red. "All personnel to stations. Unidentified fleet detected. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill." The Rolithians in her quarters exchanged glances, ears swiveling toward the door. One of them, a communications specialist named Lornty, pulled out a handheld device and checked it. His fur rippled with what Cassidy had learned to recognize as surprise. "That is the Imperial Third Fleet," he said quietly. 23 vessels. Full battle complement. "Your fleet?" Cassidy asked, setting down the teapot carefully because her hands wanted to shake and she refused to let them. "Yes, but why would they be here?" Good question. Terrifying question. Cassidy ushered the officers out, promising they could continue their cultural exchange later if they all survived, and headed for the command center. The corridors were organized chaos, personnel moving with purpose, security teams positioning themselves at strategic points. Through the observation windows, she could see the distant glints of the Rolithian fleet holding position just outside weapons range. The command center was packed. Admiral Paxton stood at the central console, his gray hair practically standing on end, barking orders to various department heads. The main view screen showed the fleet in disturbing detail. Massive warships bristling with weapons, arranged in a formation that military analysts would probably call extremely threatening. "Someone explained to me," Paxton said with the kind of calm that suggested internal screaming, "why a Rolithian battle fleet just appeared in our space during delicate trade negotiations without any advance notice or clearance." "Still trying to raise them, sir," the communications officer reported. "They're responding, but routing it through proper diplomatic channels first." "Of course they are," Paxton muttered. Then he spotted Cassidy hovering near the entrance. "Coordinator, what are you doing here?" "I work here," Cassidy offered. "Also, some of the Rolithian officers were in my quarters when the alarm went off. They seemed as confused as we are." "Your quarters? Why were Rolithian officers in your—" Paxton paused, rubbed his face. "Never mind. Not important right now. Ambassador Othamara, please tell me you know what's happening." The Rolithian ambassador stood near the diplomatic station, looking as confused as her feline features allowed. "Admiral, I have no information about fleet movements. This was not coordinated with our delegation. I am attempting to contact Fleet Command now." "Sir," the communications officer interrupted, "we're getting a priority channel request from the fleet flagship. It's High Marshal Ralmon himself." "On screen," Paxton ordered. The view screen shifted to show the bridge of a Rolithian warship, all sleek surfaces and efficient design. In the center sat High Marshal Ralmon, an imposing figure with pure white fur marked with black stripes, wearing ceremonial armor that probably cost more than Cassidy's annual salary. He looked like the kind of military leader who ate junior officers for breakfast and conquered planets before lunch. He also looked vaguely uncomfortable. "Admiral Paxton," Ralmon said, his voice carrying the weight of command, "I request permission to dock a portion of my fleet at Station Meridian 9. "Hi, Marshal," Paxton replied, his tone carefully neutral. "Your arrival was unexpected and, frankly, alarming. Perhaps you could explain the reason for this visit?" Ralmon's tail twitched. "It has come to my attention that your station hosts a human with exceptional medical knowledge, ancient healing techniques passed through generations. My crew has been working without respite for 6 cycles. Several officers have reported minor ailments. We request access to this healer." The command center went absolutely silent. Cassidy felt every eye turn toward her. She raised one hand weakly. "You've got to be kidding me," Paxton said, all pretense of diplomatic calm vanishing. "You brought a battle fleet across 3 sectors because your people want tea?" "Tea?" Ralmon's ears perked forward. "Is that the name of the remedy?" "It's not a remedy, it's a beverage," Cassidy shouted from the back. "Hot leaf water. That's literally all it is." "The reports indicate otherwise," Ralmon said seriously. "Multiple officers have experienced significant improvement in their conditions after receiving this treatment. Young Pip, offspring of Ambassador Othmara, was restored from grave illness." "He had a cold." Cassidy was moving forward now, past startled officers and bewildered aliens. "A cold. I gave him chamomile tea with honey. My grandmother's recipe. It's comfort food, not medicine." "Sir," one of Ralmon's bridge officers leaned in to whisper something. The High Marshal's ears flattened slightly. "I am informed that I may also be experiencing minor symptoms. A headache. Slight. Barely noticeable." Paxton stared at the screen. Then at Cassidy. Then back at the screen. Then he started laughing, great heaving laughs that doubled him over. The entire command center watched their commanding officer lose it completely. "I'm sorry," Paxton gasped, wiping his eyes. "I'm sorry. Let me make sure I understand this correctly. You brought 23 warships, full battle complement, because you heard about tea and want some." "When you phrase it that way, Admiral, it sounds less strategic than intended," Ralmon admitted. "Less strategic? High Marshal, this is absurd." "This is adorable," someone else said, and Cassidy turned to see the Prilnoth ambassador, a bird-like creature with iridescent feathers, flapping into the command center. An entire fleet mobilized for a beverage. How charmingly inefficient. "I find it rather sweet," gurgled the Mernlock representative through their translation collar, water sloshing in their environment suit. Military personnel finally admitting they need rest. "This is a waste of resources," the Prilnoth squawked. "This is unprecedented," Othmara said quietly, and when Cassidy looked at her, the ambassador was trying very hard not to smile. "High Marshal, with respect, you have created a diplomatic incident over tea." "The crew's health is my responsibility," Ralmon said stiffly, but his tail was still twitching. "If human medicine can improve their condition, it's not medicine." Cassidy threw her hands up. "Okay, fine, fine. High Marshal, I will make your people tea. But we're doing this on my terms. Understood?" Ralmon straightened in his chair. "I await your conditions, Healer Cassidy." "I'm not a healer. I'm a logistics coordinator. And the first condition is that you stop calling me that." She crossed her arms. "Second, you're not all coming to my quarters. We'll set up in the main gallery. Third, anyone who wants tea has to participate in cultural exchange. You share a story, teach me something about Rolithian culture, or bring a small gift representing your homeworld. This isn't a medical clinic. It's a tea service. Got it?" "These terms are acceptable," Ralmon said after a moment. "How many crew members may attend?" "How many are allegedly sick?" A pause. Approximately 260. Of course there are, Cassidy muttered. Fine, we'll do shifts, 20 at a time. It'll take a while, but that's the deal. Agreed. My gratitude, healer, coordinator Cassidy. Someone help me set this up before I lose my mind, Cassidy said to the room at large. The next 6 hours were surreal. Station personnel transformed the main gallery, a large open space typically used for formal receptions, into what Cassidy could only describe as the galaxy's weirdest tea room. Tables and chairs arranged in clusters, multiple tea stations set up with industrial-sized kettles borrowed from the station cafeteria, and a line of increasingly sheepish-looking Rolithian officers waiting their turn. Cassidy moved from table to table, pouring tea, listening to stories, accepting gifts. A young officer gave her a small carved stone from his home province. A grizzled veteran taught her a battle hymn. One nervous ensign just wanted to talk about his partner back home and how much he missed them. High Marshal Ralman himself sat at the first table, cradling a mug of tea in his massive paws, looking simultaneously dignified and ridiculous. This is pleasant, he admitted after his first sip. It's tea, Cassidy said, sitting across from him. Just tea. You know that, right? This isn't going to cure anything serious. It's comfort. It's taking a break. It's sitting down for 5 minutes and acknowledging that you're a living being who needs rest. In Rolithian military culture, Ralmon said slowly, rest is earned through victory. Stillness is acceptable only in death or meditation. To simply sit and drink tea. He paused. This feels forbidden. Maybe it shouldn't be, Cassidy said gently. You work your people hard. You work yourself hard. There's honor in that, sure, but there's also a thing called burnout. Sometimes you need to just take a breath. The human speaks wisdom, rumbled an older officer at the next table over. My joints ache from standing watch. I told myself it was illness, but perhaps it is simply exhaustion. When did we forget how to rest without shame? Another asked quietly. The gallery filled with quiet conversation, the clink of mugs, the occasional laugh. Other species started drifting in, curious about the spectacle. The Prilnoth ambassador, despite her earlier complaints, asked to try some tea. The Mernlock representative requested a sample to analyze for their people, who couldn't drink it but appreciated the cultural significance. Cassidy watched it all, exhausted and bemused, pouring cup after cup of tea while proud warriors awkwardly learned to take a break. You've started something strange here, Admiral Paxton said, appearing at her elbow with his own mug. A battle fleet mobilized for tea time. The brass back home are never going to believe my report. I just made tea for a sick kid, Cassidy said. How did this become my life? Because apparently the galaxy needed someone to teach everyone to sit down and breathe for 5 minutes, Paxton replied, grinning. Could be worse. Could be another war. True, Cassidy agreed, watching High Marshal Ralman actually smile at something one of his officers said. Though I'm going to need a serious resupply of tea. 3 days into what station personnel had started calling the Great Tea Incident, Cassidy had served approximately 400 cups of tea, learned more Rolithian cultural practices than she'd ever thought possible, and had quietly become the most unlikely diplomatic figure in recent coalition history. The main gallery had transformed from a temporary tea service into something that resembled a permanent cultural institution, with multiple species now showing up to share their own traditional beverages and stories. The Prilnoth brought a bitter herb drink that tasted like regret and old socks, but apparently improved focus. The Mernlock created a kelp infusion that nobody could drink, but smelled oddly pleasant. Even the station's human contingent got involved, with various crew members bringing coffee, hot chocolate, and one memorable contribution of something called chai that made the Rolithians' ears stand straight up in surprise at the spice level. Cassidy was in the middle of explaining the difference between green and black tea to a fascinated audience when her comm unit chirped urgently. "Cassidy, we need you in the medical bay immediately," came the voice of Dr. Winters, the station's chief medical officer. "It's the ambassador's cub." Her blood went cold. "I'm on my way." She ran through the corridors, heart pounding, ignoring the startled looks from other personnel. The medical bay doors hissed open, and she found Othamara standing rigid near one of the exam beds, where Pip lay looking even worse than he had that first day. The cub was struggling to breathe, small chest heaving, skin beneath his fur showing an alarming bluish tint. "What happened?" Cassidy demanded, moving to the bedside. "He was fine this morning," Othamara said, her voice cracking. "Playing, eating normally. Then suddenly he collapsed. Our medical officer examined him but cannot determine the cause. His lungs are restricting, his system is in crisis." "Allergic reaction," Dr. Winters said grimly, checking readings on the medical console. "Severe anaphylaxis. But we can't figure out what triggered it. Nothing in his recent food, no environmental changes we can identify." Cassidy's mind raced, thinking back to that first day, to Pip's symptoms. "Wait, when I first found him, he had cold symptoms, right? Runny nose, watery eyes, general misery. What if that wasn't a cold? What if it was allergies the whole time, and the tea just made him comfortable enough that nobody noticed the underlying issue?" "Allergies to what?" Winters asked sharply. "That's what we need to figure out, and fast." Cassidy turned to Othmara. "When did his symptoms start the first time? Was there anything new in your quarters? Anywhere he'd been?" "We had just moved into our quarters 2 days before," Othmara said, thinking hard. "The station had prepared them with plants from various worlds, as a welcome gesture. Decorative flora." "Plants," Cassidy repeated. "Doctor, what flora is toxic or allergenic to Rolithians?" Winters was already pulling up databases, fingers flying across the console. Cross-referencing Rolithian biology with station botanical inventory. Got it. Mirandian fern. It's a common decorative plant, completely harmless to most species, but the pollen can cause severe reactions in Rolithians, usually just avoided in their spaces. But if someone didn't check the manifest— "How do we treat it?" Cassidy cut in. "Already on it," Winters said, preparing an injection. "Antihistamine compound, adapted for Rolithian physiology. This should counteract the reaction. We'll need to remove all Mirandian fern from any areas the cub frequents and keep him monitored for the next few days." The injection worked quickly. Within minutes, Pip's breathing eased, color returning to normal. He opened his eyes, looking confused and frightened, and Othamara immediately gathered him close, purring in a way that sounded like relief and fear and love all mixed together. "He's going to be okay," Winters assured them. "But Coordinator Cassidy is right. He's been suffering low-level allergic reactions this whole time. The tea probably helped with the inflammation and discomfort enough to mask the severity until it built up to a critical point." "So, the tea wasn't actually healing him," Cassidy said quietly. "It was just making him comfortable while he was slowly getting poisoned by decorative plants." "The comfort was still valuable," Othmara said, looking at her with those intense amber eyes. "You gave him ease when he had none. You noticed when others, including myself, did not see clearly. You may not be a healer in the way my people understood, but you healed nonetheless." "I just paid attention," Cassidy said, feeling awkward, "and got lucky with the diagnosis." Luck and attention, Winters added with a slight smile. Two extremely valuable medical tools that fancy equipment can't replace. Word of Pip's crisis and recovery spread through the station with the same speed as the original T story, but this time with a different tenor. Cassidy found herself summoned to a meeting in the main gallery that evening, where a peculiar assembly had gathered. Admiral Paxton, Ambassador Othamara, High Marshal Ralmon, and representatives from multiple species. "I owe everyone an explanation," Cassidy said, standing before the group feeling distinctly out of place. "The tea I've been serving isn't medicine. It never was. It's a comfort beverage from Earth. It can ease minor symptoms, make you feel more relaxed, help with inflammation or sleep. But it's not a cure for anything serious. I should have been clearer about that from the start." "You told me this from the beginning," Ralmon pointed out. "I chose not to fully listen." "We all did," Othamara added. "We wanted to believe in something miraculous, in ancient human wisdom. But perhaps the real gift was simpler than that. You gave my child comfort when I could not," she continued, stepping forward. "You gave my warriors permission to be vulnerable, to rest without shame. You created a space where strength was not measured by constant vigilance, but by honest connection. These are greater gifts than any medicine." "The trade negotiations concluded this morning," Othamara said, a slight smile crossing her features. "Most successful talks in recent history, according to the diplomats. Do you know why? Because, for the first time, both sides were rested, clear-headed. The Rolithian delegation had been taking tea breaks, actually sleeping proper cycles, returning to talks refreshed rather than exhausted." "Exhausted people make poor decisions," Admiral Paxton agreed, "though I never thought I'd see the day when tea time became a legitimate military strategy." "What happens now?" Cassidy asked. "That depends on you," Ralmon said. "The fleet will be departing, but we wish to establish a regular cultural exchange program with this station. My people need to learn this concept of rest without shame, and I believe other species could benefit as well. We've already had requests from 6 other coalition species wanting to participate," the Prilnoth ambassador added, her earlier skepticism replaced with genuine interest. "The Myrnaloc are developing a compatible beverage service for aquatic species. This has become something larger than tea." "It's become a movement," Paxton said, looking bemused. "A rest movement, started by a logistics coordinator with a kettle." Cassidy laughed, the absurdity of it all catching up to her. "I just wanted to help a sick kid." "And you did," Othamara said softly. "You helped all of us." The following week saw the establishment of what the station officially designated as the Cultural Beverage Exchange Program, and what everyone else called Cassidy's Tea Corner. The main gallery devoted a permanent section to it, with representatives from multiple species contributing their own traditional drinks and customs. Rolithian officers established rotating shore leaves specifically to visit the station for what they called restoration cycles. Other coalition worlds started requesting information about setting up similar programs. Cassidy found herself with an unexpected assistant, Pip, fully recovered and determined to learn everything about tea preparation. The cub appointed himself her official helper, carefully measuring ingredients with his small paws and earnestly explaining to visitors that tea is comfort, not cure. This is very important to understand. "You've created a monster," Admiral Paxton told her one afternoon, watching Pip lecture a bemused Myrnloc about proper steeping temperatures. "That kid is going to grow up to be a professional diplomat." "Could be worse," Cassidy said, pouring another round for a group that included 3 Rolithians, 2 humans, a Prilnoth, and something that looked like a sentient cloud, but was apparently from the outer rim. He could grow up thinking rest is weakness. Her comm unit chirped. She glanced at it and groaned. You've got to be kidding me. What now? Message from Coalition Command. Apparently another fleet is en route. Different species this time. They're reporting urgent medical needs and specifically requesting the human tea healer. She looked at Paxton. Do I laugh or cry? Laugh, he suggested. Definitely laugh. And then put the kettle on, because apparently you're now the galaxy's most unlikely peacekeeping tool. Cassidy sighed, smiled, and did exactly that. Through the gallery windows, stars glittered in the endless dark, and somewhere out there, another fleet was coming for tea. She'd need to order more supplies. But first, she had a station full of beings who'd learned to sit down, share a warm drink, and remember that rest wasn't weakness. That connection mattered. That sometimes the simplest gestures carried the most weight. Not bad for just tea.